Hello and welcome to our program. With a deep understanding of the relationship between governance and politics and an uncanny sharpness for finance and figures, he has a straightforwardness that can be quite disarming. Please welcome our guest on the show today, Union Minister for Railways, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. So welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So अगर हम देश को अपनी हथेली समझें और उस हथेली पे जो लकीरें होती हैं, जो हथेली के एक हिस्से को दूसरे से जोड़ती हैं, अपने साथ थोड़ी थोड़ी जिंदगी भी लेके जाती हैं, that's the Indian Railways. How has your tenure been in the ministry so far?
As you correctly pointed out, it's literally the lifeline of India. And as you said, हथेली पे लकीरें, यानी this is also the destiny of India.
True.
So, as you can see from your own life, what is the lifeline, what is the fortune line, what is it? So ultimately that will decide the future and fate of India, because this is really a backbone of logistics of India. This is also probably the only source of travel for millions of people who cannot afford any other means of transportation. So this is extremely challenging to do both. To shape the destiny, that means you have to look into the future. At the same time, if it is a lifeline, then you must keep the life flowing.
Absolutely.
So you must have a proper balance between today's needs and future demands from the railways. So balancing is a very important thing. So what we did was we decided to plan out a strategy. एक साल का तो बजट होता है, तो हमने पेश किया हमारे पार्लियामेंट के सामने, लेकिन साथ साथ में हमने उस पेश करने के समय 5 साल का एक नक्शा भी लोगों के सामने रखा. वजह यह थी कि एक साल में तो हम करना ही चाहिए, लेकिन सिर्फ एक साल तक ही सीमित रखेंगे तो 5 साल जो चिंताएं होगी उसके बारे में हम सोच नहीं पाएंगे. इसलिए दोनों को हमने करने की कोशिश की. मुझे आज कहने के लिए बहुत खुशी है कि दोनों में काफी हद तक हमने बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे मंजिल हासिल करने की कोशिश की है. जैसे कि हमारी पहली चिंता थी इमीडिएट, कि लोग कहेंगे वो ठीक है, आगे जो होगा तो कल तो सूरज उगेगा नहीं उगेगा देखेंगे, लेकिन आज की बात क्या है.
जी बिल्कुल.
सवेरा आज है, शाम तो बाद में होगी. तो इसलिए हमने कहा कि लोगों की इमीडिएट प्रॉब्लम्स क्या है. तो साफ सफाई रेल की ये बहुत बड़ी चिंता थी. मुझे यकीन नहीं होता है कि सिर्फ इतने कम समय में हमने उसमें बड़े पैमाने पे लोगों को साथ में लेकर उसको साफ करने में कामयाब रहे. 26 मई को जब हमारी नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार की 1 साल पूरी हुई थी, वहां से लेकर 15 दिन का पथौड़ा हमने अरेंज किया था, a fortnight. And during that fortnight we got everybody involved, right from the lowest of the person to the chairman of the railway board. Everybody was involved into this whole process of working for the railway. One of them was the cleanliness. So cleanliness, we have been able to do substantial progress on platforms, in trains, in tracks. We also got a number of other initiatives which has made it possible and not fail at all. So one was this. Second was food. आज भी लोगों की बहुत शिकायत है, मैं भी उससे बिल्कुल हूँ, लेकिन पुरानी तरफ से कॉन्ट्रैक्ट चल रहे थे. तो हमने कहा इस पे तो मैंने पूरा रिव्यू चालू किया है कि किस तरह से कैटरिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को देखा जाए, और एक मीडियम टर्म पे हम हर जगह पर एक बेस किचन लगाने की कोशिश करेंगे, ताकि लोगों को बहुत ही फ्रेश खाना हर 2 घंटे की सफर में पिकअप कर पाएगी, क्योंकि ट्रेन तो गुजरती है 2 घंटे में. हर जगह में ऐसी बेस किचन हो कि 2 घंटे से ज्यादा उसमें अंतर ना हो, तो यू कैन पिकअप द फ्रेश फूड. तो एक क्या ई कैटरिंग चालू किया. ई कैटरिंग का मतलब यह है कि आपको सिर्फ रेल का खाना खाने की जरूरत नहीं. ये तो हम कहेंगे अभी घर में जाते तो माँ जो खिलाएगी वही खाना पड़ता है, पत्नी जो देगी खाना पड़ता है, क्योंकि रेल को तो पकाने को आता नहीं है. तो चॉइस नहीं है. तो चॉइस देने की हमने कोशिश की ई कैटरिंग के द्वारा. ई कैटरिंग का मतलब यह है कि आप जो खाना चाहते हैं वो ऑर्डर कर सकते हैं, आपकी जो चॉइस है वहां से. जो भी रजिस्टर्ड वेंडर्स है IRCTC के पास, टिकट बुक करने के टाइम वो हो सकता है. ये रहा दूसरा. तीसरा, हमने जो कंबल हम लेते हैं लिनन, उसके बारे में बहुत शिकायत थी. लोगों को लगता था यूज तो नहीं किया किसी ने, तो मैं उसको ही इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूं तो नींद भी नहीं आएगी. तो हमने मैकेनाइज्ड लॉन्ड्री शुरू किया. जहां जहां मैकेनाइज्ड लॉन्ड्री है, ये पूरी तरह से लोगों को अच्छी तरह से लिनन मिल रहे हैं. अभी 1 साल 1.5 साल में हम सबको उसमें डाल देंगे. ये लाख लिनन. फिर रिजर्वेशन की लोगों की शिकायत थी, बहुत शिकायत थी. जब मैं रेल मंत्री बना तो शिकायत वही ज्यादा आती थी. IRCTC के वेबसाइट को हमने पूरी तरह से रिवैम्प किया. आज मैं मानता हूं बड़े पैमाने पे वो भी एक लोगों को राहत मिली है. फिर थी टिकटिंग के लिए भी. एक तो रिजर्वेशन हो गया, लेकिन टिकट निकालने के लिए भी तो हमने मोबाइल ऑपरेशंस के ऊपर बहुत सारी जगह पर अभी पेपरलेस टिकटिंग की शुरुआत की है. और हमारी उम्मीद है कि अगले 1-1.5 साल में बहुत सारा रेलवे का नेटवर्क हम उसमें कवर कर पाएंगे. फिर हमने हमारी ये कोशिश है कि रिजर्वेशन के लिए हमने बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे जहां जहां ज्यादा रश था एक्स्ट्रा बोगीज लगाने की कोशिश की, एक्स्ट्रा कोचेज लगाए, ताकि लोगों को उसी ट्रेन में कॉस्ट वही रही, फ्यूल कॉस्ट नहीं बढ़ी, लोगों को ज्यादा एक आदमी को वही मैन पावर यूज कर रही है। तो ऐसी बहुत सारी चीज शॉर्ट टर्म में की। मीडियम टर्म के लिए हमने कंजेशन दूर करने के लिए रेल का डबलिंग, ट्रिपलिंग, सिग्नलिंग, इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन पे ऊपर बहुत बड़ा बल दिया है। आप यदि ये नंबर देखेंगे कि कितने हद तक उसमें वृद्धि हुई है, तो मैं भी खुद हैरान हो सकता हूं, आप भी जरूर होगी। लेकिन ये कोशिश है कि आगे 3-4 सालों में हम उसको पूरी कर देंगे। जैसे कि आज भी मैं जब मंत्री बना तो 63-64% तक पंक्चुअलिटी थी। आज हमने 83, 84, 85% तक भी लाई है, कुछ में 100% भी है। लेकिन फिर भी नेशनल एवरेज कम क्यों है, 85 क्यों है? क्योंकि मुगल सराय टू इलाहाबाद ये जो हमारा सेगमेंट है, वहां पर इतनी कंजेशन है, 160-170% कैपेसिटी से यदि ट्रेन ऑपरेट करती है तो वहां से ट्रेन जाना मुश्किल है। अभी एक रास्ते पे 5 गाड़ी जा सकती है, उसमें 50 गाड़ी आएगी तो क्या होगा?
क्लॉगिंग तो होगा,
क्लॉगिंग हो जाता है। वही स्थिति इसमें भी है। तो उसको दूर करने के लिए काम हो रहा है, लेकिन उसमें टाइम लगेगा। लेकिन टाइम ज्यादा ना लगे इसके लिए हमने बीच में ये भी कोशिश की कि किस तरह से हम इमीडिएटली एक लूपिंग करें, जैसे कि बाईपास करते हैं, उस तरह से हमने जिसको ट्रैफिक फैसिलिटी कहते हैं उसके ऊपर भी बल दे रहे। बहुत सारे स्टेशन के ऊपर एस्केलेटर लग गए, बहुत सारी जगह पर लोगों को व्हील चेयर मिलने की सुविधा प्राप्त कर दी है, लिफ्ट लगाए गए। बहुत सारी जगह पर पानी जो सिर्फ नीर बॉटल लेता पड़ता था, बाहर से लेते, उसमें भी कुछ लोगों की शिकायत थी। हमने डिस्पेंसर लगाने की कोशिश की, बहुत कम कीमतों में लोगों को पानी मिलेगा, जो 15 रुपए देने की जरूरत नहीं, 1 रुपए में भी मिलेगा। इसलिए बहुत सारी चीजों के ऊपर हमने ध्यान देकर काम करने की शुरुआत की है। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि रेल का आधुनिकीकरण, मॉडर्नाइजेशन, रेल का विस्तारीकरण, रेल का कैपेसिटी ऑगमेंटेशन, रेल की कस्टमर एम्यूनिटीज को ठीक करना, और साथ साथ में सब करने के लिए एक गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल क्या है कि पूरी तरह से पारदर्शिता हो। लोगों को ये शिकायत न करने पड़े कि किसको रिश्वत देनी पड़ती है, घूस देनी पड़ती है। मुझे लगता है सबसे बड़ी हमारी कमी रहेगी। तो इसके लिए पूरी तरह से पारदर्शिता लाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं। पहले तो मैंने खुद से शुरुआत की। मंत्री बनने के पहला निर्णय यदि मैंने कुछ लिया होगा तो ये था कि मेरे पास 1 रुपए का टेंडर भी नहीं आएगा, और आज तक नहीं आया। 1 साल पूरा होगा, एक टेंडर भी मैंने देखा नहीं, देखूंगा भी नहीं। कमर्शियल डिसीजन देने चाहिए। साथ साथ में हमने पूरी पावर जनरल मैनेजर और डिविजनल रेलवे मैनेजर को डेलीगेट करने की प्रक्रिया को शुरुआत कर दी है। काफी हद तक हो चुका है, प्रक्रिया निरंतर है और भी होती रहेगी। तो मैं मानता हूं ये सभी चीजों के ऊपर ध्यान पर देखे हम कहेंगे तो मैं कहना चाहूंगा कि रेल कठिन परिस्थिति से गुजर रही थी, आज भी कठिन परिस्थिति है, लेकिन उसमें सुधार लाने की कोशिश इतने कम समय में जो भी संभव था करने की हमने कोशिश की है। और भी स्ट्रक्चरल चेंजेस करने जा रहे हैं, जैसे अकाउंटिंग रिफॉर्म करेंगे। हमने फाइनेंस सेल की, पैसे नहीं थे, लोग कहते थे ये तो ठीक है जी, हमको अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म चाहिए, बहुत ट्रेन चाहिए, मॉडर्नाइजेशन चाहिए, सिग्नलिंग चाहिए, सेफ्टी चाहिए, सब चाहिए। ये सब करेंगे कैसे? पैसा होगा तो ही करेंगे। बिल्कुल। और आप कुछ भी, हमारे मराठी में मेरी जो मातृभाषा है उसमें हम कहते हैं कि आप किसी भी चीज का ढोंग ला सकते हैं, लेकिन पैसे का नहीं। मैं कुछ भी कह सकता हूं, मेरे पास ये है वो है, अच्छा ठीक है तो दिखाइए, किसी में तो कुछ नहीं है, तो फिर क्या कैसे चलेगा? तो आप ये सब करना चाहते ठीक है, लेकिन कुछ है आपके पास तो धन सीमित है। किराया बढ़ा तो हमने नहीं, हमने फ्रेट को भी सीमित रखा है। तो इसके लिए ये पैसा आएगा कहां से? अभी वित्त मंत्री ही पैसा देंगे, तो बेचारे वित्त मंत्री के पास भी देश चलाने के लिए भी हमको कर्जा लेना पड़ रहा है, क्योंकि पिछले इतने सालों का जो सिलसिला वो जारी है। इसलिए यदि हम उस तरह के फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ही निर्भर रहेंगे तो बेचारे वो तो कितने लोगों को देंगे? बहुत सारे लोग मांग करे, एक ही माँ है, 10 बेटे हैं, तो हेल्थ वाले मांग रहे, एजुकेशन वाले मांग रहे, मैं मांग रहा हूं, रोड वाले मांग रहे, तो कहां तो वहां भी क्लॉगिंग हो जाएगी। इसीलिए मैंने लाइफ इंश्योरेंस कॉर्पोरेशन से 1,50,000 करोड़ रुपए का बजट पेश करने के बाद कुछ दिनों में ही एग्रीमेंट साइन किया। बहुत कम कीमत में 30 साल में रिपेमेंट की हैसियत से हमें धन मिल रहा है, और पूरे विश्व में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट करने के लिए आपको लोन देने की, क्योंकि 8.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए जो हमने 5 साल के लिए प्लान बनाया वो रेलवे के इंटर रिसोर्स से नहीं आ सकता। उसके लिए 8.5 लाख करोड़ का क्या आप समझते हैं कि हमने लोगों के सर पे किराया बढ़ा के डालना चाहिए? इंस्टीट्यूशनल फंडिंग, तो इंस्टीट्यूशनल फाइनेंस करना चाहिए। तो हमने ये भी तो मैं समझता हूं बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे एक कोशिश की है, सारे डोर्स खोल लिए आपने, डोर खुल जाए, कोशिश जारी है। मैं तो नहीं कहूंगा कि आप मुझे पूछेंगे क्या आप खुश है, मैं कहूंगा नहीं, लेकिन मुझे आप ये पूछेंगे क्या जहां आपने शुरुआत की थी, जब आपकी ट्रेन में आपने एंट्री की, क्या आप वही ट्रेन खड़ी है कि आगे गई है? तो काफी आगे गई है, लेकिन क्या डेस्टिनेशन पे गई है? नहीं गई है, डेस्टिनेशन भी दूर है, लेकिन जो हमने कड़ी पार की वो भी काफी अच्छी लंबी रफ्तार से हम आए हैं।
राइट, एज लॉन्ग एज गति है तो प्रगति तो होगी, एंड आई थिंक गति तो है रेल में। वेरी वेल पुट,
तो प्रगति होगी।
सर, वांटिंग टू चेक फ्रॉम यू, आपने कहा कि ये बैलेंसिंग एक्ट, यू नो, व्हाट विद द प्रेजेंट एंड द फ्यूचर, रेलवेज तो बहुत सारी बैलेंसिंग एक्ट करती है बिटवीन अ सोशल पर्पस एंड अ कमर्शियल पर्पस, दैट मीन्स रेवेन्यू जनरेशन एंड कनेक्टिंग इवन नॉन पेइंग लाइन्स, बिटवीन being capital intensive, technology and engaging and employing people, between balancing an old school generation which is still working and the new young lot. तो ये जो बैलेंसिंग एक्ट है हर एक स्तर पर, इसमें कितनी कठिनाई होती है?
You are a very, very valid point, and I'm very glad that you have really identified the core of the problem. You know, people perceive railway as something on which they have a right. And that's a good thing. That sense of belonging is something as an asset. But also, people must realize that if you do not work on commercial principles to some extent, if not entirely, how will you manage the affairs of the railways? For example, for a distance to be traveled between whatever distance, if the bus is charging you 100, railway is still charging 1/10 of that. If the private operators are charging obviously much higher.
Right.
So can we not have over a period of time some sort of a regulatory framework to which determine that how much should be the subsidy? Because there is a subsidy element which government is obviously committed to do. For a simple reason is that we have a social obligation. We belong to the country. People are also must travel from place to place. Like the worker from Bihar, वो काम करने के लिए अपने परिवार को पीछे छोड़ के यदि कलकत्ता में काम करता है, मुंबई में काम करता है, तो जाने के समय वो इतना पैसा नहीं दे पाएगा क्योंकि उसकी हैसियत नहीं है, उसके पास पैसे नहीं, तो गरीबी के कारण। तो गरीबी दूर करने का हमारा जो काम चालू है, हमारे मोदी जी कर रहे हैं, वो तो उसमें हम सफल रहेंगे तो ये भी धीरे धीरे हो जाएगा। लेकिन ये बैलेंसिंग एक्ट करने के लिए हम यदि एक ही साइड झुक जाते हैं तो गिर जाएंगे। बिल्कुल। तो बैलेंसिंग एक्ट जैसे कि वो जो एक्रोबैट होता है, वो चलने के समय बिल्कुल बैलेंस करके, नहीं तो गिर जाएगा, तो अवार्ड तो दूर रहा, जिंदगी भी खतरे में आएगी। तो इसके लिए मैं मानता हूं रेल को जीवित रखना, रेल को चलते रहना, निरंतर उसका सफर जारी रहना, ये मैं मानता हूं सबसे जरूरी है गरीब लोगों के लिए, क्योंकि गरीब लोगों के लिए रेल एक ही रास्ता है, वास्ता है। तो इसीलिए बैलेंसिंग करने के लिए बहुत काम करना पड़ता है। हमने वो सोच के ही ये टाइम किया था कि ये समय शायद पहले ही हमने दोनों ऊपर ध्यान डाला, कस्टमर सर्विस के ऊपर, कस्टमर एमिनिटीज के ऊपर किसी भी बजट में इससे पहले इतना धन नहीं दिया था। और मेरे को कहने को खुशी है, जो भी मैंने बजट में कहा था 103 हमारी बजट अनाउंसमेंट पूरी तरह से इंप्लीमेंट हो गई है इतने कम समय में। और ये अगला बजट जब पेश करूंगा तो मैं जरूर लोगों के सामने रखूंगा कि सब बजट में जो जो कहा था उसका आज क्या स्थिति है।
आई थिंक दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज पीपल नीड टू नो, क्योंकि आप तो रोज ये सफर तय कर रहे हैं ना, बट इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू शेयर विद द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड द अपवर्ड मूवमेंट ऑफ द ग्राफ। आई थिंक उससे हौसला अफजाई तो बहुत होती है। आपने अभी कहा कि द बैलेंसिंग एक्ट, एंड आई थिंक द मेन पॉइंट दैट हैज कम आउट मिस्टर प्रभु इज दैट for sustainability, even for the common man, for the poor man, the railways need to be alive and sustainable even to help them initially. So the balance between the emotional angle and the rational angle, I think that is very, very critical.
Essentially, what is important for a common man is in the long-term sustainable way, as you said, the railway must keep going.
Bilkul.
Railway must be strong enough, then only they can support this.
True.
If my family has to be supported, the head of the family must be strong. If the railway is not strong, how is it going to help them? Then they will be completely vulnerable. So that's the balancing act. So even this budget, we tried to put customer service for a big focus. At the same time, did not compromise with the long-term interest. Borrowing it to sustain investment leading to better amenities leading to more revenues making it more sustainable. So this is the vicious cycle we should try to, the virtuous cycle we should try to bring in, breaking the previous vicious cycle in which no investment, bad service, less revenue, no sustainability, and people are suffering. See, common man is the worst sufferer because of lack of services. And lack of services is reason because of lack of investment.
True. So there's another area where actually you've made huge changes, and that is the politicization of the railways. Invariably, there were different regional interests and other interests that would crop up, and somewhere the the mother unit or the mother purpose of the railways, which is transportation, connectivity, the lifeline, that would take a backseat. How have you managed that?
You know, if you really look at it, if I'm a minister in government of India, then I have only one interest to protect. Only one. That's my national interest. And national interest protected properly, it takes care of all other interests. Now, if you look at it, if I belong to a particular state, which I'll obviously be, but that state also is part of Union of India.
True.
So if I'm taking care of the national interest, I'm taking care of that state as well. If my body is taken care of, am I not taking care of my hand at the leg and my elbow at the same time? But I'll say, no, I love my hand so much that I'm going to take care of my hand and forget the body. What will happen to my hand? So taking national interest into account, and that becomes an overriding priority, you are taking care of all other interests. I would tell you something which really made me happy, is one comment. There are many good comments came after the budget. One interesting comment was that ये पहला बजट है जो पढ़ने के बाद ये पता नहीं चलता कि मंत्री कौन से राज्य के हैं.
Wow.
So provincial interest is very important. This time we are given 3.5 times to states which needed it. Orissa, very small state. It's not something and the good people, we increase their share 3.5 times. Bengal, Bihar, all the states which needed the help the most, each of the state got at least 200 times more than ever they got before. So this is or compared to the previous years. So this is something which we did, but at the same time keeping national interest going. So depoliticization means that we should not bring politics in decision making when you think about national interest. So national interest can be protected only through a political process. That's a democracy. But if we keep politics ahead of nation, then we lose out. So what we did was, any party, Odisha has Biju Janata Dal, West Bengal has Trinamool Congress, Bihar had the other government, but we never discriminated.
Yeah.
We said state needs help. The people of that state are citizens of India, therefore my responsibility. My responsibility is 1.25 billion people, 125 करोड़ लोगों की जिम्मेदारी मेरे सर के ऊपर.
We're going to go in for a short break, sir. जब वापस आएंगे तो आपसे जानेंगे कि the railways is very people intensive, and I'm sure there are so many HR issues that come up. Also the challenge of how we see management and governance, अलग-अलग स्टाइल में. How do you bring unity of governance and management, and top down इसको filter कैसे करते हैं? आपका last mile की nubs पे उंगली रखना, that is so critical, because finally you and me, the common man, feels the last mile. And also a little more about your personal journey into this world of politics and governance. But right now we take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still in conversation with India's Railway Minister, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. So, आपने पहले बात की when we started the program that how you have actually delegated very, very critical decision making downline. That emerges from a space of saying, what is my role, what is my strong point, and how do I trust? How does one encourage the atmosphere of trust in an organization which is so big and is so diverse and varied in its people?
There are 13 lakh plus employees in the railways. There are 8,000 railway stations. There are thousands of trains which run every day. And there are multiple functions. You have to run the train means you have to have food on the train, you must have water, you must take care of energy needs of the railway, you must have proper people coming on the time so that the railway can take off the station right time, signaling people must be in place, there must be people who check the tracks, they should be there, maintenance has to happen properly. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of things have to happen. And they must happen at the same time. If they happen, cannot happen sequentially. It should happen in tandem so that the train can work. So there's a synchronization issue. Now, just imagine, is it possible that this operation part, the part related to running of train on a day-to-day basis, on a minute-to-minute basis, can it be done by one source? It is impossible. Now, therefore, functionally, it always happens there. I mean, this is something which as the station master is far more important. In my opinion, the gangman, the lineman, who actually called trackman, is far more important. because he's the one who is actually at the cutting edge, as you very correctly pointed out earlier. So now, if we do not take them on board, and if there is no alignment of interest and objective of each one of them falling in line at the same time, how do you bring the organization aligned to the corporate goals? When I present a budget, it's a corporate budget, corporate goal. But those goals have to be implemented not by me alone. They have to be implemented by all the 13 lakh employees in the manner that these 2.7 crore people who travel every day, they also must feel that they're part of it.
Right.
So it's a very difficult task.
Mammoth exercise.
Absolutely. Now to make it happen, many ways, this is not the only way, but many ways. But first thing I thought was at least let us empower the people who are delivering it. So they should not be only accountable and responsible, they must be, but also have empowerment. So they can do the thing that they feel like should be done on the job. We have done that a great deal up to DRM. I want to even delegate some power to station masters, because they are the ones who actually are also in day-to-day touch with the situation. I also did one thing. There are 13 lakh employees. I wrote letter to each one of them. And also, I send a message to all my employees on their birthday. And this is something which I am not doing it as a PR exercise. This is something which I feel committed to. I feel they are part of my family. If I have been assigned a responsibility by my Prime Minister to be head of the family, then he has also been expecting for me to take care of my family members. So if I don't do that, and if what is the meaning of family if I don't know the birthday of my family member? And what is the meaning of family if I don't communicate with him? What is the family?
So true.
So I have to communicate, I have to be part of their happy moment.
Right.
So all of this we are trying to do. But I feel that a large more needs to be done. We need to make sure that each of our localized operation must be done in such a way that that operation takes responsibility, also accountability, and therefore empowered to make sure that that particular unit of operation, whatever it is, a station or a division or a zone, they must be so efficient that they'll be able to manage it as if they're managing only that part. If each part manages properly, then the whole also is managed properly. But how can you manage the whole without making sure that the parts are managed properly? So that's the whole philosophy behind doing this.
Right. So one of the biggest human resource challenges is bringing a change in attitude, and particularly in such a huge organization where attitudes have been set for so many years, you're definitely asking for an attitudinal shift. How is that going to come out?
This is something which I've dealt with in the past in some other responsibilities. I've been always saying that if we feel that social change, economic changes can be brought about by law. So I was just thinking, if it was so possible to change the law, I would bring one law called attitudinal change law.
Okay.
And that law will be passed unanimously, and then the situation will be so good. But it doesn't happen like this. Attitude change is something which is an exercise of long duration, of success, which will come only at the end of it. So you must constantly work on it. But you have to do many things. So one of the things we did was, I just come back to the point I mentioned earlier. We had this pakhauda, a fortnight.
Okay.
In that, what we did was we asked all the general managers and senior people to travel by ordinary class with the citizens of India, the travelers, interact with people. I will not believe it. So many senior people have told me that it was a revealing experience. They came to know firsthand what the people are thinking. We requested them to go to the colonies of the employees and see how they are living, because general managers live in a bungalow, but most of the people live in quarters.
Right.
They are not taken care of. In fact, that's why in this fortnight we also tried to take care of the quarters of the people. I want to do it for the RPF also, the Railway Protection Force. Right. They live in barracks, sometimes in a very, very challenging situation. So I think we have to change that. It's an attitudinal change issue. Basically, what is sensitization? If I'm sitting here, I'm not even aware about what is happening in Rwanda. I don't know what is Rwanda, whether it's a state or a place or is a cinema hall, but Rwanda is a country. So if there are people suffering in Rwanda, how would I feel their pain, their suffering if I'm sitting in Delhi and try to understand their pain? It will never be possible. So this attitudinal change will come only when you are facing a reality from as close quarter as possible.
Right.
When you realize your problem. Second thing we did was, I use social media. a Prime Minister uses more than anybody else. I ask each of the function in the railway to use Twitter handle and a social media. The advantage is that now you're sitting here, you complain, I know it in a fraction of a second. The moment is on a real-time basis. So if I start getting complaints in one division about particular nature, that water quality, for example, if I am getting from you, I would say, yeah, you are just making a free complaint, okay. But if I'm getting hundreds of complaints, tens of complaints on the same issue constantly from the same place, I would realize there is something wrong. So what I will do, I will try to make systemic changes. But suppose if these complaints are going into some centralized force, which we are doing anyway, there is a centralized portal which collects complaint. But additionally, we started this.
Okay.
You'll be again surprised. I'm not saying it is 100% successful. It has helped a great deal. So many of the DRM in Delhi, Mr. Arora, he receives a complaint, he immediately says, I have received a complaint, I'm addressing it. So many DRM. There's a DRM in Salem, in Tamil Nadu. He complained, I received a complaint on such and such time we are done. People are so happy. I'm not saying all the DRMs are doing it yet,
right,
but the process has started. So I am saying attitudinal change is an issue which needs to be taken. It's not just an HR issue. It's a much larger issue of how we perceive our other compatriots. How do you feel about others who are my responsibility as well, but also is a part of my own social obligation? Do I perceive it like this? Then it becomes a change. And therefore that change will happen over a period of time.
Right.
There is no magic wand. We have to work on it sustainable basis. But I think it will come. It has come. But it has not come to the extent to which people must have seen it as radical change. But people also must work with them, also give time to them, try to understand them, their difficulties. You see, always when you complain, you have a right to complain. But also must appreciate the fact that all complaints cannot be dealt with. Somebody wants the train to be run at 4 times faster than this. It's a very good expectation, right expectation. But to make that happen, there has to be a life cycle of expectation also.
right.
You must realize that when you expect and when can it be delivered. Some things can be delivered very, very quickly, like we did in case of customer satisfaction. Many things we did in less than 6 months. But there are certain things like increasing the speed of railways, that means I would need to, and bringing punctuality into areas which are so critical, have been neglected for years, and that will take some time. So expectation management is also an issue. But the moment the functionary on the ground is engaged into the task of addressing a challenge on his own, the feel that he gets, and then he starts talking to the people, they will, the pain that he suffers, the other person is suffering, he feels it. That's the attitudinal change.
So grievance redressal railways has to really have, I think, at 2 levels. One is, of course, the customers, and one is you have 13 lakh employees. There are so many things and issues that come up, and one person's grievance will invariably be against another person or another system. So this redressal system sometimes can become so overwhelming that the system tends to say, I can do only this much and no further, because the volume is so high. You're really using information technology to actually leverage grievance redressal at all levels. But internal grievance redressal, how are you coping with that?
13 lakh employees mean 13 lakh families.
Yes.
So every family is suffering because if the employees has some problem. For example, sometimes a person is posted somewhere else and his family is living somewhere else. It's not his grievance alone, it's a family's grievance.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with that? You know, what we did was, there are many grievances, but I'll just talk about few. One, I said housing. The second, I said about medical facilities. So these are the type of grievances. So we are trying to work on each of those. But just systemically, what you mentioned, a very important point, systemically. Transfers, postings, and promotions are some of the 3 major HR issues, or I would say even appointments. So first you get appointed, na? If you don't get a job, how are you there?
True.
Once you get appointed, then you want transfer, then you want promotion, then you want posting. We are trying to deal with all 4 of these in a institutionalized way. Recently, I came out with a policy for transfers and posting. It's very transparent policy.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when you make it more transparent, people don't find it easy. Sometimes people find it difficult to deal with.
Yes.
Because, I was saying, it was good that I could go to minister and I don't deal with that anyway.
Okay.
But I made a policy. Now for recruitment, we have done a completely transparent process. of appointment through an online examination. You know, it is sad when you realize, and it is actually very revolting, you know, we feel very angry when you realize that somebody is taking you for a ride for a job. Yes. You know, that is something. So how do you do that? People go around and say, oh, I will get it done. He takes money and then disappears. Now, poor fellow, a vulnerable person, he has no choice.
Yeah. You know.
So now what we'll do? Online examination.
Okay.
Our Prime Minister already announced no interviews for such posts at the junior level. That will obviate a great deal the cheating that takes place. So that's appointment. So you get in first. Then transfer and posting will happen like this. We did a lot of promotion recently. Large number of them. Probably the highest in a year as compared to previous period. We did it in as transparent way as possible. I would say 100% transparent way. So this is the only way we can deal with such issues. But at local level, we are trying to create a grievance redressal mechanism. So DRM and GM will have meetings constantly with the employees and their representatives. Today also, the national level union federation is meeting us, so that there's an ongoing process wherein we bring them together, understand the grievances. But I think we need to do more. I fully agree, because if the person working in the railway is not fully happy and he is not carrying any baggage of his personal life tensions into the job, he will not be able to deliver fully.
People management is a double-edged sword. So one is, of course, to look at people with compassion and say we need to see their needs and everything. But there is also this whole issue of how do we ensure then productivity from that employee? Do we have a performance management system? So is the railway also looking at productivity?
That's a very important point again. What we are trying to create is an independent mechanism to understand the efficiency parameters for each of the vertical and each of the business unit as small as possible. This will ensure that if you have benchmarks, how do you measure the productivity? You have to, it's not an absolute productivity, it's a relative term.
True.
Because if I say I am very productive, but when I meet somebody else, he says, oh, I'm not hardly productive because that person is so much better than me. So it's a relative issue.
Right.
So the relativity, to understand, you must have proper benchmarking. So we are trying to do that. Also, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll explain to you a system which we are trying to put in place. Unfortunately, I'm carrying a baggage. I'm a chartered accountant by training. So what I said was, why not bring a completely systemic institutionalized mechanism to understand this process? So what we are trying to do, ultimately, what is the objective of any government expenditure, or for that matter any government action, is getting some outcomes. Desired outcomes.
Right.
Outcomes are different than outputs. For example, I just told you that we are investing so much of money. What is the output is that lines will be created. But those lines will not result into reducing delay. That means outcomes have not come.
True.
Output is there, I can see the output. Outcome is something which is more abstract. But if you do not have a system of understanding that abstract in quantifiable terms, the abstract will remain only abstract and can always remain unseen.
How true.
So how do you do that? So I said we'll start a government the accounting process, which is bookkeeping, starting with budgeting, going to government expenditure, second step, then output, and fourth outcome. And integrating all this into management accounting system, management information system, costing system, bookkeeping, and all that rolled into one. What is the advantage then? That if I am spending 100 crores on a particular activity, each of these 100 crores must produce some outcomes.
Yes.
How will they produce outcomes if I don't have understanding about this 100 crores, the quantifiable outcome that I want? If I want that, and then I'm referring to integration of accounting and costing, I must also find out whether this 100 crores are, this outcome worth 100 crores are produced by X number of people or they are done by X plus number of people. That exercise will be automatic. Because of these processes that you're going to do to measure outcomes, you'll have to actually do this. So this systemically, you'll be able to understand the productivity needs as well as real productivity of each of these smaller units where you are producing these outcomes. So this is the whole exercise. we are trying to put in place. It's not going to happen in a hurry.
Right.
We have started it. It's a very complex exercise, but we are preparing a framework for it. Hopefully in the next 2-3 years, we should be able to put into some use. I think that will be a great help to everybody. Even those then who are performing better should be able to demand better recognition, better rewards for their action.
Right.
Today, everybody is treated at par. You do well, you get X amount of money. If I don't do well, you get X.
So disillusionment anyway sets in.
Absolutely.
And I think what is beautiful about this system is that it might be a little difficult initially to put things in place and get all the groups going. But once the system starts running, then it's fairly auto-generated. It's difficult to tamper with.
Absolutely right. And this is what it should be. See, basically, if you don't take away a management is an art of subjectivity.
Right.
Because, you have to be subjective. If I'm a manager, and if I see A person is good and B is not good, I should be able to distinguish that. But also the management should not be only subjective. You must bring in some sort of an objectivity into it. So objectivity will be brought in by the system. The subjectivity will be used by someone as a manager, and the manager's own ability as a manager will be judged whether how much of the subjectivity is using, ignoring the objectivity.
Right. 1996, you decided to leave a good practice. You were doing so well, really cresting the top of your career, and you decided to join politics. Why?
This is a very difficult decision for me, because no one from my family was ever in politics, and like typically we always criticize politics, but we don't want to join it.
I know.
So this is a typical
we are armchair critics. Yeah.
I am not going to do it.
Right.
So I used to be the chairman of the largest cooperative bank in India at that time. So I was involved with a lot of social work. I was involved with 150 NGOs. So I used to deal with society quite a lot. And I also, typically, nothing happens. I could have done it. So somehow God presented me with an opportunity to do it yourself. Then my whole family, my sisters, my wife, my mother, everybody said, no, don't do it. This is not our cup of tea. So I said, if not my cup of tea, then I should not have tea either, because, somebody else is doing problem and I keep criticizing it. So I jumped into it. Luckily, the day I joined politics, I was a member of Parliament Lok Sabha. I defeated one of the finest politicians in the country at that time, Mr. Madhu Dandavate, which I felt bad. Then the day I joined, I became a member of Parliament Lok Sabha. I was a cabinet minister, Minister of Industry in Atal Bihari Vajpayee's cabinet. So, luckily, God was kind. I got a jump from nowhere to politics into cabinet. And then, of course, that was a short-lived cabinet.
Right.
So, before I realized I became minister, I had to also adjust myself to the next minister position.
Okay.
So,
yes.
We got into opposition, worked there. Again, I got into cabinet.
But a lot of learning both ways, huh?
Absolutely. I will tell you something. In fact, there is nothing like being in the government, because then you can deliver. But there is nothing like in the opposition either, because that gives an opportunity to understand so many subjects at the same time. When you are in the parliament, in the opposition, you have to apply yourself to all issues that come your way. When you are in the government, like a railway minister, you deal with railways.
Right.
So this is the advantage, is that because as a minister you can deliver, MP cannot deliver, unfortunately, because this is the plight, that members of parliament, expectation of society from them is so large, and because they are not holding an executive position, they are lawmakers essentially, they cannot fulfill that executive expectation from them. So we have to also create some systemic changes there, but that's a different issue. So when I was in opposition, I used to speak on all subjects, virtually, because I used to have interest in many subjects. So that also enriched the vision in many ways. Then a lot of people come and interact with you, you understand the problems of people, then you deliver on your constituency. We did extraordinary in our constituency. For every 10 village, I created a center called Parivartan Kendra, wherein we gave physical change through gymnasium.
Right.
Then we give them intellectuals, so we give them computers. For economic development, we give them skill-based training.
Okay.
And about 70,000-80,000 people have been trained like this. For environmental, we started Eco Club. For the social development, we got women, youth, everybody involved in it. So it was a 6-dimensional development which helped to reach out to the people. So we said, government alone cannot do anything and should not do anything. We should try to empower people to do it. Unfortunately, over a period of time, what has happened is people expect that government will do everything.
Right.
And therefore, the real productivity, the issue that we talked about, and the drive, motivation, if it is not there with the people, and expectation is only that somebody else is going to do it for me, there's no self-motivation is the best motivation. So therefore, we try to do that. This is still working. We have got large number of people who are empowered by that. 70,000-80,000 people are self-employed on their own as a result of this. I mean, not that everybody is now self-employed, but we give them training. So this was the great learning experience at that time too. So in my opinion, politics is an extremely useful tool for social transformation. Politics is a means by which you can change the face of India. That's why Mr. Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, is all the time working of using his government machinery to transform society, to transform India, to shape tomorrow's India by today's action. And that's why politics is very important and useful.
Right. You have a very deep interest in young people and youth. You've also written extensively about how young people really need to empower themselves and to become a stronger part of the social fabric. In terms of politics and young people, would you advise young people to move into politics as a proper career, one? And secondly, what should be realistic expectations? Because today, everybody wants instant gratification. I've entered today, within 2 years, I want it now, So how does one understand patience, perseverance, and positioning in politics?
Very good. I'll tell you very frankly, as I said, I was a little lucky that I got into it and got the helm of affairs in a very short period of time. Everybody may not get that. So I think we should be ready, as you said, perseverance, to start working at a grassroots and slowly slam. But at the same time, I don't even think that every youth must join politics. That's not necessary. Ultimately, what is politics? Is a means of nation building. If nation building needs many other different faculties to come to fore, different segments of society to join hands, then only create a superstructure. So even if a person who is wearing a uniform and fighting for the country at the border, he's doing a great job for the country. But everybody will not be a uniform soldier.
Right.
You can still fight for your society, fight for a nation by doing something else. A doctor is doing as good a job. A farmer is doing a far better job because he's actually producing food. A worker is also creating wealth for the society. So each job is important. What is important is that when you do that job, if you can keep that in mind, that I am doing it for a wage, I am doing it for a salary, I am doing it for a compensation, fair. But also I am doing it for something else. That ice of the pudding, that is something, icing of the pudding, that's something which will make India stronger. That additionality may be small in size, but that together put by 125 crore people will make India a different country than what it is today. And that is what called a national spirit. We must bring in that national spirit for everything that we do. Even if I think a nurse, she's doing a fabulous job. Right. She's nursing a patient. But she thinks, see, I'm only a nurse and that person is a doctor. Why should you think like this? Nurse is as important. Ward boy is far more important. He's doing something which is so critical. Doctor is of course important. He's saving life. But the whole chain of doing this thing makes India. I think the national spirit is very important, and that spirit is something which is more important than body. That is always the case.
Absolutely.
What is soul important or body is important? If body is important, then the soul goes by, the body doesn't function.
Right.
So what is nation is a body. What will drive the nation is a soul. What is that soul that will come from is the national spirit, and that's why we must keep it going.
Right. So whether I make a decision of which clothing to buy, which mode of transport to take, should one pay a bribe? Is somebody asking for a bribe? How do I handle it? And say, it's a personal decision, but there's a nation involved.
Absolutely.
And can I think with that lens? And that is
you're absolutely right. Each person contributes to a nation.
Yes.
In fact, what is a nation? Is ultimately a society, group of people. What is group of people is individual. So each individual changes. This is something which J. Krishnamurti had said years ago when I was a young child. I always used to listen to him. That one man changes, world changes.
Yes.
There was only one Mahatma Gandhi, and he brought about a change.
Right.
So I think, really speaking, it is one man who can also change and become a change agent and can contribute to a bigger change. So, but if you think it is his job, not my job to change, change will never come.
Right. At a personal level, sir, what really inspires you?
Honestly, there is nothing more important than your nation. What is my identity? My identity, I am an Indian. If India becomes strong, I become stronger. I become better than what I am today. And therefore, what is driving me is the spirit which our Prime Minister is really trying to do. All these programs, Make in India, Digital India, Clean Bharat, all these programs are for building future India. The great country that we will be. And we are destined to be, and we have capability of becoming. But it will not happen just like that. So these are all building blocks to make that happen. So if he is doing it so much and he works ceaselessly without any break, I have not seen ever since he was nominated as a Prime Minister candidate by BJP, and since he has become Prime Minister, all his day schedule is in public domain. Have you seen he is taking a single day break? I don't know what motivates him to do it. He's building for the country. So if he can do so much, why we should not do at least 5% of that, few percent of that? That's what motivates me.
Okay, so I'm going to bring you from the larger picture to the layperson or the common man's picture. I think भारतीय रेल हम सबके जीवन को कहीं ना कहीं जरूर छुआ है, छूती रहेगी और बहुत अच्छे एक्सपीरियंसेस हमारे लिए लाती है. कोई एक्सपेक्टेशन आपकी एज द गार्डियन ऑफ द इंडियन रेलवेज फ्रॉम द पब्लिक?
ठीक है, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. मैं लोगों को कहता हूं कि आप और हम जब तक नहीं मिलते तब तक हम कामयाब नहीं हो पाएंगे. यदि आप ये सोचेंगे कि मैं गंदगी करूंगा और आप साफ सफाई करिए तो ये सिलसिला नहीं चलेगा. यदि हम कहते हैं कि यू कीप इट क्लीन, इट्स माय जॉब, बट कैन आई एक्सपेक्ट द लीस्ट, डोंट मेक इट अनक्लीन. So you don't keep it unclean, we'll keep it clean.
Right.
And that's what will really make India.
And when we keep our surroundings clean, we keep ourselves clean.
Right.
That's so beautiful. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on this program and sharing your thoughts, views, and passion so beautifully with us. We wish you all the best, sir.
Thank you too, as well as thank you to all the viewers, not only a good day today, but all the days to follow.
Right. Thank you, sir.